Awesome. Three, two, one. Well, Mayor Derek, welcome back. Mayor's Monday here at WSAU, WSAU.com. 2 years into this now. Hard to believe. Hard to believe that Mayor's chair feeling a little more comfortable for you.
Yeah, it's got my butt imprint and broken in.
Right, absolutely, and obviously it's been kind of a wild ride for 2 years. A lot of things happening at once, but as far as property taxes go, that was the one thing everybody was concerned about going into this winter here for the city of Merrill. How are things looking this year now that you've got the budget passed and you're ready to start sending those notices out?
Looking good. So the council and I met along with the department heads near a dozen times this past few months working on the budget. We truly left no stone unturned. We were looking for any reductions that really just were obvious. We reduced quite a bit of the capital. The way Merrill does it is we have the department heads kind of plan out 10 years ahead of time what large capital investments will they need to make. That could be new trucks, new items we need to borrow for. So they submit those and then the council looks it over. The council spent quite a bit of time cutting that down, getting our borrowing down for this year below what we would be paying off. So we paid off more debt than we borrowed. And then we also wanted to kind of make up for last year because we had that substantial increase in property taxes. So we were shooting to get it below zero. We managed to get it right at zero. And we kind of worked backwards this year. Normally, a city will pass the tax levy, not really taking, not knowing the number that will show up on the property tax bill. The levy's cut up amongst all the people that live in the city, well, own property in the city. Mm-hmm. So you're not quite sure what the increase will be for each individual property owner until the property bills get sent out. This year we estimated that amount and then kind of worked backwards to decide this is what our levy should be to give property owners a 0% increase. And then we passed that levy. I forget the exact amount, but it's around a -1% tax levy increase gives everyone a 0% increase. Some other, well.
So then, working that way with the budget, I mean, you said you kind of took a new approach to it. Did you find that worked better this year?
We'll find out once we get the tax bills. I think a lot of people will be happier because from last year, a lot of people, they don't care what the levy was, they care what the number is on their tax bill. Mm-hmm. So we wanted to take an approach that had the end user in mind. Like ultimately, the taxpayers are paying the taxes, and any increase needs to be justified. So having the mistake that was made last year, we wanted to kind of correct the wrong. Mm-hmm. And so we didn't want any increase this year. We tried to make it zero. So we worked towards that. It was interesting because I was going through some budget documents from years past, mm-hmm. and I found a memo from our previous finance director in 2001, and apparently it was kind of a contentious year where the council was having disagreements on the taxes. It seems like they wanted to reduce them, and the finance director's memo from 2001 talks about how the major issues we were facing in that year were the state levy limits, mm-hmm. holding taxes where they are, which is nothing new today. Working with that, along with the increase in healthcare costs, the increase that come along with paying for the pay and the benefits for mm-hmm. employees, because if you want quality employees, you have to pay them. Yeah. And then the third item he mentioned was, oh shoot, I'm gonna forget it. But basically the same things we're talking about today.
Yep.
And that's the big issues is how do we keep taxes low when healthcare costs are skyrocketing and employee wages have to be competitive. So it made me feel a little better. The problems I've been tackling, they aren't anything new. This is government.
Yeah, it's government in action, and you've got the decisions that need to be made. Obviously, you met with constituents several times as well throughout this process. How did they take to those open meetings and to having a say in the process?
Yeah, so we heard both good and bad things. Some of the things we did this year, we definitely don't need a dozen meetings next year. We have to figure out how to condense the meetings down. We really a lot of the meetings we had this year, we didn't make any decisions. They were educational. So I'm not saying that was a bad thing, but could we have all made ourselves educated outside of a meeting? To an extent. We still need to have some educational meetings because it's good for the public to come. And that's where a lot of the feedback we got from the public this year, it was nice to see that it was taking place in meetings. The meeting format we had kind of changed where rather than the normal council format where everyone's sitting up in the front and it's all formal, we all just put a table, circled tables together in the council chambers. So some of the negative things the audience or the public had mentioned is when we do that circle format, half the group has their back turned to the audience.
Right.
And it's difficult to hear and kind of see what's going on. I understand that, and I think next year, the idea was putting it in kind of a round table. The ideas are more organic, but we took a little too much formality out of it, I think. I think having everyone presented in a way that's visible and easy to hear and see, I think we gotta keep that. So maybe next year a little rearranging's good to try and bring the public more into it. But I did hear that they were happy with how open the meetings were. Many times if a member of the public raised their hand, we invited them to speak. Which is different than if you've ever been to a council meeting. It's very hard to have your voice heard. You really need to contact your alderman outside of the meetings if you want to be heard, because when you give public comment, you give your public comment, you sit down and it's not really discussed. So what we've been trying to do is, even outside of budget issues, if we're discussing something and we know someone in the audience is knowledgeable, because it's a small city, we all know each other pretty well.
Yeah.
Or if they just look like they have something they really want to say, we try to make it known that they can have the floor. The council can grant members of the public the floor to speak, where you're not just making a public comment, you're actually joining the conversation as it goes on a specific agenda item, like becoming part of the discussion rather than listening to the council discuss and then slapping your comment on before or after. I like how that's been going. It was a little confusing how we were going to do it at first. There was some contention about whether it should be allowed, but we've kind of gotten the hang of it as a group now, where normally it'll be suggested we let someone speak, and then I'll just say, without objection, we'll grant so-and-so the floor.
And obviously, it's a great point that you bring up, because residents, even going back to when you were elected, residents had said they really weren't feeling like they were a part of their government, and that was one of your platforms actually that you ran on. So I'm sure for many residents it's kind of refreshing to hear you delivering on that promise.
Yeah, and it was a little tricky to kind of figure out how to do it, because there are established rules, and you can't just come in and say, hell with these, you know.
Yeah, absolutely.
But working within those rules, we operate on Robert's Rules of Order, and within those rules, you know, you can grant someone the floor, and so we kind of had to figure it out, and we also had to communicate and work together as a government, because when I first did it, I was trying to grant people the floor, and there seemed to be some votes to disallow it, just as silly, this isn't how we do things.
Yeah.
The heck. But I think once certain, with enough time and enough working on it, everyone kind of sees the good that it brings now, and how it doesn't really disrupt the meeting. That might have been one of the worries, that if we let everyone in the audience continue to speak, that it's just going to make a disorganized meeting. But
a wise man once said, everything has been said, but not everybody has said it yet.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah, so it's all about communication. A lot of times, if we see that like 10 people want to speak and they're all going to say the same thing and they're all from the same organization, we'll just mention, like, we understand so-and-so group is here today. If one or a few of you would like to speak as a representative, just kind of letting the public know, like, not all 10 people need to speak. We understand you're all here for the same reason.
Yeah, and we are here to listen to you, but one or two, right?
Yep.
Absolutely. And that's it kind of leads us into our next topic, because you've been having a series of meetings over the last it's been about 6 weeks now.
Last night was meeting number 4.
So about your strategic plan, and that's something else that you have made known that you'd like to revisit during your tenure in office.
Yeah, so it's I think it was time that we revisit the plan, and it so happens the state mandates we revise it every 5 years, so time was up. Just happened to be good timing. We have kind of a neutral moderator running these meetings, Mike Robin, former CEO of Church Mutual in Merrill. The council and I selected him just because he's involved in the community, a great community leader, and he's had experience in planning sessions. So he's been guiding us through the process. The end goal is for myself and the council, along with the department heads and the public. This is our budget meetings were kind of a little informal. These strategic meetings are very informal. Pretty much at every one, we break the whole group into individual tables, where you have at each table a mixture of elected city officials, like 1 or 2 aldermen, a couple department heads, and then members of the public. And it's a really great environment where you have people from all different perspectives talking together in a small group, and you have several of those small groups all in the same room discussing, and then going from small group discussion back to large group discussion. And it really pulls all the ideas out and gets them out on the table and allows us to kind of organize them. And then between each meeting, Mike goes through a lot of work kind of organizing all of the thoughts into kind of categories. So last night we finished up with prioritizing our objectives for next year. I think we got, not next year, the next 5 years. The process is still ongoing, but we have 2 more meetings to kind of wrap things up. But right now, as a city, we've kind of decided that the most important issue is to increase our tax base. By bringing new business into town, by bringing new residents into town, with building new homes and stuff, it allows us to continue offering great services, while also reducing the amount each individual has to pay.
Yep.
The more people that live in the city, the less we all pay individually. So that's a no-brainer, and it pretty much across the board consensus from elected officials,
Right.
department heads, and the public. It makes sense. We need to increase our tax base. So next week we'll be looking at all the ways that we can accomplish that goal, even though we kind of came up with that goal by coming up with things we need to do, and then they all fit under that goal.
Is there any, maybe one area that you're really looking to target? Do you want to bring, certain business sectors into town, manufacturing, retail, things like that? Or is that going to be what you kind of talk about over the next couple of weeks?
We want anything that, when it comes to industry, we aren't really going to turn anyone away. Like, there's, unless they're, I don't know, I can't, we're at a place in time where, like, most American industry, it's gone through, 100 years of regulations. They're not dumping poisonous chemicals.
Right.
Well, it still goes on, but
right.
There's no industry that we're not looking for. Right now, obviously, our main industries, we still have the window industry in Merrill, various other manufacturing. Our big employers, Church Mutual, selling insurance. It would be nice to get more IT, I think, in Merrill. Some sort of work from home. Something with computers, I think, would be nice, just because that's a growing industry. As for, and we've talked about this in our strategic planning meetings, how does a city go out and find a company that wants to build a large new building in Merrill? It's not something you want to spend millions or hundreds of dollars on trying to find someone to bring them in, because they might just not exist. What's most important is that we're ready when an opportunity crosses our path. Like, we have to evolve. We have to have open land available. So the city's taken care of that in the past. We always have lots, a list of lots ready, so that if we are approached by a business, we can say, what do you need?
Yeah.
Well,
here you go.
And
We've got it.
give them a little tour around town and show them where we think they would fit the best. We need, the second issue that we are going to be working towards is increasing the population of Merrill. In the past decade, there's been a very slight, it's starting to decline. We went from 10,146 in 2010. The estimate, the census is coming up very soon, but the estimates put us at around 9,600 now. So a loss of like nearly 500 people. Looking at why, it's kind of hard to tell. Housing is a much different game. It doesn't make a lot of intuitive sense, because you think, well, if there's less people, we should have extra housing now. But the reality is that we don't live like we used to. You used to have a family of 5 living in a very small house, which still goes on today, but the average, it's starting to increase, where house sizes themselves for each family, our average house size is increasing. What we expect to move into, we're looking for larger homes. So Merrill's gonna, in the next 5 years, it was something that was starting to be looked at several years ago. I'm forgetting which year we did it, but we have done a housing study already. The previous mayor was involved with that. We're going to need to make investments into more housing in Merrill. If we want to attract businesses need employees, and employees need a place to live.
Absolutely.
So that seems to be a main focus that we're going to be tackling, and they kind of go hand in hand. Raising the tax base includes new homes, and raising the population also includes new homes. And another item that we've kind of created as a third strategic goal that also fits with 1 and 2 is to really nail down what Merrill's identity is and then market that. I think most people could explain, they would agree that Merrill is a small city. It has that small town atmosphere, but still has all the amenities a city would. Beyond that, we kind of, there's not a full vision of what everyone sees us as.
Right.
There's hints of it. I hear words like sustainability. I hear words like farming and agriculture. I think maybe one of the reasons why we can't really put a word to what we are is because the word doesn't exist. Something that, and we'll need to talk about this more in our strategic planning, but something that
something that can be used to give the city an identity, or a marketing campaign, if you will.
When in talking to people and listening to what they view Merrill as, and then trying to reiterate what they've said, but in one single word, the closest I can come is self-sufficient. But when you're talking about a city, you aren't talking about the self.
Right.
So I guess city sufficient, but that doesn't really tell you what we are.
Right.
But I think the idea that as a city we have the stores, the farming and gardening, the manufacturing, the production of goods, we have it all in our local community, where if the world economy tanked tomorrow, we would feel safe because we have everything.
You're diversified.
Yes, we have, like, we aren't all going to starve tomorrow because we do live in an area where people know how to grow their own food, and we have a lot of talented gardeners that, could start teaching and producing. And I think that's what we all kind of feel we are, and I think that's something that we want to strive to be, like continue working on improving that image, because that seems to be what the future is.
Well, it certainly sounds like you've put a lot of thought into these discussions, and it's obviously something that people in the community are taken seriously. We'll certainly look forward to where these go and what ends up happening from this here again in a couple of weeks. As you said, you still have a few more of these discussions to go. Yep,
and I encourage anyone in the community to come and join us. You don't need to attend every meeting, even if it's just one of the last two. We appreciate the input, and it's kind of fun.
Yeah,
it's just 2 hours of your night once a week.
And like we said earlier, this is something that you've prioritized in your administration. You said, look, we want to find our identity and find things like this. The sign on the sign outside of town says we're the city of parks. I mean, that's something that you've emphasized as well. Just again, quickly before we let you go here, skate park update, disc golf update. We can't leave without talking about those. I know there's all kinds of snow on the ground and people aren't exactly outside right now, but where are we at on those items?
Okay, so skate park update. The designer created a design, a preliminary design. As we gave some basic feedback, just to small tweaks, and we don't have a date set, but very, very soon the skate park committee, and likely with a joint meeting with the Parks and Recreation commission. I think they like working together. They should be meeting to review a revised design, and then I'm not sure how many revisions they'll go through, but hopefully by spring we're ready to start, really pushing the fundraising for the skate park.
Mm-hmm.
So far it looks cool. I'm excited.
Right.
Disc golf, it's winter, so we'll be having the Ice Bowl again in Merrill.
Okay.
3rd or 4th annual. Maybe 4th. I think 3rd though.
Mm-hmm.
That'll be in February, so if you like disc golfing in the snow, come join us.
Mm-hmm.
And we also usually do a food pantry collection for Ice Bowl. More details will come.
Yeah.
And it did get a little more funding in the budget this year. And I guess this winter gives us an opportunity to kind of look at the courses in a new way. It's nice when all the leaves fall because you can see the paths you couldn't see previously. So maybe some course revisions or whatnot. But we should expect some more things coming this summer.
Some more things on disc golf next summer. Well, we'll look forward to it. We always appreciate the time, Derek. And again, we'll talk again in a few months.
Sounds good.
There we go.